There was a time when people worshipped Napoleon like a god. On one side, he was the greatest leader on the planet, and on the other, he was a monster, hungry for power, killing thousands of people in the process. Some say he conquered the world to try to win a girl's love. When he couldn't, he conquered it to destroy her and destroyed himself in the process. Napoleon's story is a perfect example of a ruthless emperor who knew no boundaries. But before he was the emperor whose name echoed across battlefields, he was a boy with humble beginnings. In 1769, in the town of Ajaccio, Napoleon entered the world, not as a Frenchman, but as a Corsican. Born into a noble family with little wealth to spare, Napoleon's childhood was shadowed by the struggle for Corsican independence against French rule. His father, Carlo Bonaparte, a lawyer deeply involved in the political unrest, was caught in a dilemma between his Corsican heritage and the prospects offered by the French. This duality in his father would cast a long shadow over young Napoleon's formative years. His mother, Letizia, was a strong and strict matriarch. She raised Napoleon and his 8 siblings with strict discipline, instilling resilience despite their challenging circumstances. Despite their noble status, their home spoke more of their hardships than their nobility. In his early years, Napoleon's education was a blend of turmoil and strict discipline. Sent to a school in mainland France, he was the outsider, a Corsican boy amongst French peers, often scorned and ridiculed for his Corsican accent and modest background. This isolation fueled in Napoleon a burning ambition and an unyielding resilience. The cold hallways and unfriendly faces of his school became the crucible that forged his early character. He often lost himself in his books, seeking refuge in stories of eminent leaders and military tacticians. As the tides of Napoleon Bonaparte's life turned, so too did the fortunes of a young man destined for something far beyond the ordinary. No longer just a boy from Corsica, he was now a student at the military academy in Brienne-le-Château, a place where his destiny would begin to unfold in the shadows of cannon and strategy. In the cold, austere halls of Brienne, young Napoleon found himself an outsider once more. His Corsican heritage, like a mark of Cain, set him apart from his peers, who came from established French noble families. This isolation, though, became the breeding ground for deep thought. Sharpening his brain like a blade, he threw himself into learning about warfare, absorbing the stories of ancient empires and the tactics of famous generals. His hunger for knowledge was relentless, his ambition unstoppable. But in these studies, a shadow was growing. The young boy who had once faced ridicule was changing, his ambitions now mixed with the bitterness of his past. In the quiet corners of the academy, a strong resolve was forming in him, a resolve to climb to the top, to lead, to conquer. But as Napoleon's ambitions grew, tragedy struck. In 1785, he received the devastating news of his father's death. The loss of Carlo Bonaparte was more than just a personal blow to Napoleon. It served as a stark reminder of how quickly life can change and how unpredictable fate can be. This loss added new depths to Napoleon's character. The young man, who had already been overcoming the challenges of his humble background, now faced the reality of being the family's leader. His father's death brought a sense of urgency to his dreams, intertwining his personal grief with a burning drive for power and recognition. Napoleon's talent in military studies was clear. Even in these early years, he showed signs of the military genius he would become. But it wasn't just his intelligence that set him apart. It was his iron will. A will that refused to be confined by the limits of his birth or social position. A specific instance showcasing his talent and determination occurred during a mock battle exercise at the school. Unlike his peers, who typically followed established military tactics, Napoleon devised his own strategy. He took a risky and unconventional approach, possibly employing a daring flanking maneuver or an unexpected formation, which caught his instructors and peers by surprise. This maneuver not only led to his team's victory in the exercise, but also demonstrated his ability to think creatively and strategically under pressure. Yet, under this ambitious exterior, there was still a trace of the young boy inside, a boy longing for acceptance, respect, and a rightful place in a world that had often made him feel like an outsider. Napoleon, now a young man in his early 20s, found himself in a Paris gripped by political turmoil. The air was thick with the cries for liberty, equality, and fraternity, yet were darkened by the violent shadow of the guillotine. It was a perilous time when friends could quickly become foes, and the line between hero and villain was dangerously thin. In these streets of revolution, Napoleon saw his chance. His time in military school had prepared him, but nothing could compare to the raw, intense struggle for power he found in the real world. This was a power that could either lift a man to incredible heights or send him plummeting into obscurity. But the chaos around him wasn't the only thing shaping Napoleon. The dark, brutal nature of these times echoed the conflict within him. Once an outsider, he now saw a path to rise, to climb out of the shadows of his Corsican upbringing. In 1789, the winds of change were blowing across France. The National Assembly, formed to create a constitutional monarchy, made a decision that set a new course for Napoleon's life. They allowed Corsican leader Pasquale Paoli to return from exile. Napoleon, seeing an opportunity, took leave and joined Paoli, but was met with cold rejection, viewed as an outsider due to his father's abandonment of the Corsican cause. A bitter disappointment that sent him back to France. By April 1791, Napoleon's career took a significant turn. He was promoted to first lieutenant in the 4th Artillery Regiment. Beyond his military career, he became active in the Jacobin Club, known for its revolutionary ideas. There, Napoleon's passionate speeches against nobility and the clergy established him as a strong supporter of the revolution. In April 1793, a civil war broke out in Corsica. Pasquale Paoli, a key figure in Corsica's fight for independence, turned against the Bonaparte family, which included young Napoleon. This conflict within Corsica led to the Bonaparte family being forced into exile. They fled to France, leaving their home behind. This moment was pivotal for Napoleon. In 1793, Napoleon Bonaparte's career took a major turn. He stepped into the spotlight during a military siege in Toulon, where the French were fighting against royalists and their British allies. When the French artillery commander was injured, Napoleon was chosen to replace him due to his connections with Antoine Salicetti, a Corsican deputy and family friend. He quickly proved his worth. This success earned him rapid promotions, first to major, and then to adjutant general in October. Despite being wounded in December, his fierce artillery attacks forced the British to leave Toulon. In recognition of his pivotal role, at just 24 years of age, he was elevated to brigadier general, but the political tide was turning. As Maximilien Robespierre, the resolute leader of the government, recognized Napoleon's exceptional artillery skills, his career was on the rise by early 1794, leading him to Italy. However, fate, as fickle as the politics of the time, had other plans. The political winds in Paris shifted dramatically, and in July 1794, the once powerful Robespierre fell from grace. Because Napoleon was seen as close to Robespierre, he was arrested for being part of a plot against the government. After a few months, he was released, but didn't have a military job anymore. He found himself suddenly without a command, a twist in his remarkable rise that left his future uncertain. In the early months following his release from imprisonment, Napoleon Bonaparte faced a crucial crossroads. He rejected a position to lead the artillery in the Army of the West, assigned to suppress the counter-revolution in the Vendée, a role he saw as a dead end. This pivotal decision led him to the bustling streets of Paris, where he hoped for a brighter future. Life in Paris, however, was far from easy. Napoleon found himself struggling to make ends meet on a meager half-pay. And during all that, he got involved with Désirée Clary, a rich merchant's daughter from Marseille. This romance just made his complicated life even more tangled. In October 1795, a critical moment unfolded in Paris. The National Convention, on the brink of dissolving, had introduced a new constitution for the First Republic. At the same time, royalists determined to bring back the monarchy stirred a rebellion in the city to block these changes. It was at this juncture that Paul Barras, wielding dictatorial powers from the National Convention and aware of Napoleon's impressive feats at Toulon, chose him for a crucial role. Napoleon was tasked with confronting the rebel forces marching against the National Convention. On October 5th, 1795, in a decisive and bold move, he crushed the insurrection, saving the National Convention and the Republic. This act marked a turning point in Napoleon's career. He was now the commander of the Army of the Interior, deeply entwined in the nation's political and military affairs. During this period, Napoleon's personal life took a dramatic turn. He met Joséphine Tacher de la Pagerie, a captivating Creole widow with a complex past. She was the mother of two and had been involved in numerous romantic relationships. Their meeting led to an intense and immediate attraction between them, leading to their marriage on March 9, 1796. At the same time, his loyalty to the Directory was also rewarded when he was appointed Commander-in-Chief of the Army of Italy. Eager to implement the campaign strategies he had recommended to the Directory, he accepted the role with ambition. Just 2 days after marrying Joséphine, he left to lead his army, stepping into a new chapter of his life filled with military and political challenges. When Napoleon arrived in Nice to lead his army, he faced a tough situation. His army was supposed to be 43,000 strong, but in reality, he only had about 30,000 soldiers who were poorly fed and equipped. Despite this, Napoleon inspired his troops with a powerful speech, promising them wealth and glory in the lands they were about to conquer. Napoleon quickly proved himself as a brilliant military leader. He cleverly defeated the Austrian and Sardinian armies in a series of battles, which allowed him to march into Turin, a major city in Italy. The King of Sardinia, realizing he couldn't win, asked for peace. As a result, Nice and Savoy, which were taken by the French in 1792, officially became part of France. Napoleon was not just a great general, he was also smart in politics. He set up a new government called the Cisalpine Republic in northern Italy. This new state combined several smaller regions under French control. He also had plans to take back Corsica, an island that had been controlled by the British. Napoleon then focused on Mantua, a strong fortress in Italy. He laid siege to it, and even though the Austrian army tried to break the siege 4 times, they failed each time. After his final victory at the Battle of Rivoli, Mantua surrendered. Napoleon then boldly moved towards Vienna, the capital of Austria. He got so close, just 60 miles away, that the Austrians asked for peace. This peace talk led to the Treaty of Campo Formio. Through this treaty, Austria gave up the southern Netherlands to France and accepted the new republics Napoleon had created in Italy. In return, Austria got some land from the old Republic of Venice. This treaty was a big win for Napoleon, making him very popular in France. Meanwhile, in France, Napoleon was worried about the royalists gaining power. He advised the French government to use force against them if needed. He even sent General Pierre Augereau to Paris with soldiers to support a coup that removed royalist influences from the government. This move not only safeguarded the Republic, but also boosted Napoleon's fame and power. In 1798, the leaders of France planned to invade the British Isles and chose Napoleon to lead the army for this operation. However, after inspecting the area along the English Channel, Napoleon realized that invading Britain was not possible unless France controlled the sea. So, he came up with a new plan: to take over Egypt and threaten Britain's trade route to India. This idea got support from the French Foreign Minister Talleyrand and the French leaders, who were also happy to see the ambitious Napoleon go far away. Napoleon's journey to Egypt started off well due to some lucky breaks. His army took over Malta on June 10, 1798, and then stormed into Alexandria, Egypt on July 1st, quickly gaining control over the area around the Nile Delta. A month later, however, things took a bad turn when the French fleet was destroyed by British Admiral Horatio Nelson's forces at Abu Qir Bay during the Battle of the Nile. This defeat meant that Napoleon and his army were stuck in Egypt. While in Egypt, Napoleon tried to introduce French-style political systems, administration, and skills. But Turkey, which controlled Egypt, declared war on France in response. To stop a Turkish attack on Egypt and maybe find a way back to France, Napoleon led his army into Syria. However, the British held off his forces at Acre, leading to a failed and costly retreat back to Egypt. Back in Europe, Napoleon's defeat in Egypt showed that he wasn't unbeatable. Great Britain, Austria, Russia, and Turkey formed a new alliance against France. French forces in Italy suffered defeats in early 1799 and had to pull back from much of the region. These military losses caused political problems in France itself. Government takeover brought more radical leaders into power. One of the new leaders, Emmanuel Sieyès, thought that a strong military leader was needed to prevent the return of the monarchy in France. Seeing an opportunity in the chaos in France, Napoleon decided to return home. Officially, he wanted to save the French Republic, but he also saw a chance to gain more power for himself. Even though the French government had ordered him back, he hadn't received this order and left Egypt with some companions without official permission. They managed to avoid the British Navy and arrived in Paris, where Napoleon was ready to take advantage of the unsettled situation in France. Thanks to French successes in Switzerland and Holland, there wasn't a pressing need for drastic action to protect the nation. However, Emmanuel Sieyès, a leading political figure, still wanted to change the government and saw Napoleon as the perfect partner for this plan. In November 1799, Sieyès and Napoleon orchestrated a coup d'état, a sudden and decisive action to overthrow the government. They forced the existing government leaders to resign and dissolved the legislative councils. They set up a new government called the Consulate, led by 3 consuls, Napoleon, Sieyès, and Pierre-Roger Ducos. Although there were 3 leaders, Napoleon quickly became the main person in charge, effectively taking control of France's future.